Now I would like to introduce, our panelists, and I think no one better can introduce as themselves. So I will give a word to each of our panelists today to introduce shortly about themselves and about the company and what exactly they're doing related to e-commerce. And I would like to pass the word to Adi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adi, working with a company called Zilingo. We started as a B2C e-commerce marketplace, but have ventured upstream and started defining ourselves as a B2C e-commerce supply chain enabler of sorts. Happy to sort of deep dive post the conference with anyone who's more interested. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Deepak?
My name is Deepak Shadadpuri. I work with DSG Consumer Partners. We are the region's first early stage consumer focused VC. We primarily invest in non-tech companies, CPG, FMCG, brands that are disrupting large companies on the supermarket and shop shelves. We do a little bit of digital in Singapore, given the lack of manufacturing, but our core bread and butter is looking at brands that are disrupting the age-old large brands we see every day.
Thank you so much. Michael?
Hello, I'm Michael Gethin. I'm one of the partners at Northridge Partners, an advisory firm that works with founders in the commerce space broadly across Southeast Asia and South Asia. So our expertise is in board governance, board advice, raising capital and M&A. We have particular sector domain expertise in what we think of as a broad commerce sector, which includes e-commerce marketplaces. And at a personal level, I'm an investor in numerous new retail model businesses.
Thank you so much. Can you say a few words about it?
Sure. Hi, I'm Henry. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Shopback. We are an e-commerce rewards and discovery platform. We started about 5 years ago. Since then, we've expanded to Southeast Asia, Taiwan, and Australia. We power over 1,000 e-commerce websites, including Amazon, Taobao, travel sectors, and more. Very happy to be on this panel.
Thank you. Gregory?
Yes, my name is Gregory Hara. I'm a Tokyo-based, lower mid-size buyout company, J-Star. I'm a CEO of the, J-Star. We have total AUM for $550 million. We have invested over the 3, funds about 37, companies, including the e-commerce companies, and I have also personal experience for the SaaS service provider investments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the last but not the least, Anurag.
Hi, my name is Anurag, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Shopmatic. Shopmatic is a B2B SaaS company that enables the entire omni-channel ecosystem for SMEs and businesses across the emerging markets. So we have about over 50,000 customers who are using our services and spread across India, Singapore, Southeast Asia, China, as well as the Middle East.
Thank you, guys. I'm really proud to sit here with all the experts, who can give deep understanding of the industry and what is happening. I would like to know your opinion. What's going to be the next technology? What's going to be the next breakthrough? Like last time it was smartphone. It changed completely the game. It changed completely the rules. So what do you think, what will be the next technology that will have the same impact as last time for smartphone? Who would like to start?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Sure. I think since you made a parallel with smartphone being the previous one, I think if you were to think of something at that scale, which is going to create some sort of a revolution in the tech space, I feel it's going to be artificial intelligence, machine learning. We already have signs of it coming into picture where we see Amazon launching Amazon Alexa, Amazon Echo, which in itself is a very beautiful, cheap device, sucking consumers into the entire Amazon ecosystem, Amazon platform. And as someone, just as a very simple example, as someone's batteries, let's say, runs out of their home and they say, hey Alexa, I want batteries, the first preferred battery that is going to reach your home is going to be an Amazon basic battery. And same way now with the whole food integration, the entire grocery space in your kitchen, when you say I'm running out of milk, it's going to be supplied to you through Amazon's Whole Food. So it's a very beautiful way in which artificial intelligence has been used to sort of suck people into the platform platform, and it's not just going to happen on sort of the commerce space, but even on the content space, where again taking the example of Amazon, the Prime feature that is now out and Prime videos that are now going on, the speculation, and very strong speculation, is that's going to also be super soon linked with products and private labels being built around those shows. So I think artificial intelligence, in my view, is definitely going to be the game changer.
Okay, so Adi thinks it's going to be artificial intelligence. Which have options we have today? Who would like to be the next? Such a gentleman. Anurag, please you.
I mean, I think it's a good point. I mean, I think there are two parts to this, right? You're looking at innovation and the next big thing from a consumer standpoint or from a business standpoint. And I think if you just separate the two, I think you will start to see how that plays out. I mean, I think for us in the emerging market space, SMEs or businesses still do have a long way to go in terms of becoming digital, becoming more savvy with, and comfortable with all that technology has to offer them. And I think that for us is the first start of things. There are lots of other elements that you could use. You could use AI, you could use machine learning to help their lives become better. But essentially there is still a long way that customers or merchants or businesses needs to get to take it from that standpoint. So I mean, that's how we see it. We do see that digital itself is a big space for people to embrace and then get better, especially in the emerging markets. And how do we help them get past that for them to see the scale and the relevance of all the new technologies that are coming in.
So shortly, what is it?
So for us, it is still the digital space. I mean, it's a concept more than it's a thing. It's not a smartphone or it's how you leverage technology, and the fact that people have to realize and start to use that. There is realization, but still adoption for that has to be the next steps for that has to be taken.
Okay. So who has a contrary opinion or another opinion?
I agree. As someone who doesn't look at tech as the core of my investment thesis, what I do is study consumer behavior and look at how technology and other big mega trends impact how I make a decision. In the emerging markets, I think what I've seen is, and what's going to drive a lot of behavior is, at least in India, where I'm really focused on, is digitization of payments. As soon as payments become easier to make and know your client becomes much easier and consumers get comfortable with not dealing with cash, I think a lot of how we shop, when we shop, why we shop will change. And I've been spending a lot of time with my brands who are now most of my brands tend to launch offline before they migrate online because we back physical brands. And a lot of the reason why people don't buy something more regularly, for example, a subscription model, is not because technology or smartphones aren't there. They're just not comfortable with the payment ecosystem. So from my point of view, in the markets I look at, as the payment ecosystem sort of becomes more reliable, not that it's not reliable, consumers don't trust it. As soon as the level of trust comes to a point where they don't think about it, you'll see a whole shift in the paradigm of how consumers will behave.
Thank you so much. Michael?
I would extend that further in terms of looking at consumer behaviour, and I think that there's still an enormous gap between the online and the offline world, and technologies that can help bridge that gap in a way that's simple, frictionless, meaningful and useful to a consumer will emerge. We're in very early days of things like augmented reality, but there is a point where that may actually become not a novelty but something that's actually useful as a way of finding things, product discovery, brand discovery. And so that would be one of the trends, which I think that, we're a little way out from that getting to a real easy consumer adoption level. But I completely agree with Deepak that this issue of just taking the friction out of the system and make it easy for me to buy, that's technologies that take us in that direction. The other thing that I would add is the technology that you completely don't see, which is all the background integration and all the, if you like, the thin layer at the front of commerce, e-commerce sites, marketplaces. A lot of that's already been done in delivering really good consumer experiences. But if we look at, even with the growth of e-commerce, the bulk of retail is still done in the real world of shopping. And old school retailers are still not very good at supply chain and integration into their logistics and making it easy to say, I'm sorry, we don't have that in stock, sir, but we can get it to you tomorrow or this afternoon. I think all of that kind of back-end integration, which frankly the e-commerce players have already come to grips with that, supply chain management. If nothing else, you look at you know, the giant of the world, Amazon, and it's a great supply chain company. It's a good retailer as well, but it's a great supply chain company. So there's some of the technologies that I think have yet to really take hold.
Thank you so much. I would like to hear Henry, because you're the one who is like a shop back, right? So you have a lot of like insight in the industry.
Actually, I think the context is really for Southeast Asia, where a lot of it is still emerging and young. Accessibility is the big one. So payments, logistics, and once you can get that through, I actually agree with the feedback earlier that it's all about personalization. So that's where machine learning and all these technologies come in. With a lot of content now flowing through the system, how then do you provide the relevant content that makes sense for the user, be it in shopping, or be it in videos, or be it in just digital content. Now, if there's a lot of things for users to choose and the user is spoiled for choice, the right content to surface is often seems easy to solve, but actually in reality it's difficult we're far from ideal state today. So I actually think that is going to be the next big shift that we will make the experience a lot better for end users.
Thank you very much. Gregory, you know, you're
you know,
investment fund and you're from Japan.
I'm not a tech guy, but you know, come from Japan, and I can't, you know, I have to talk about the aging, you know, society. Therefore, anything to do with like a voice recognition, and also the because of the you know, many of the Asian people is, you know, sort of losing eyesight. You know, automated driving is another thing. You know, picture recognitions, anything to deal with the you know, these elderly people becomes the you know, serious you know, problem for Japan. So there should be a you know, number of the, you know, players, you know, do well in that, with that technologies.
Thank you so much.
So just wanted to add, I mean, firstly, Michael, thanks. You seem to have succinctly laid out our existence of Shopmatic, which does exactly what you suggested. But I think coupling what Deepak and both of you have said, I think a lot of it is driven by what the consumers want to see, and a lot of it is also dependent on how the businesses want to adopt technologies. I mean, I think if you take numbers of the US, 50% of the retail shopping is actually influenced by online experiences, and in the emerging markets it's closer to 30%. So the ability for you to be able to adopt to those technologies is simply incredibly, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have in the near term as we are going along in terms of building out digitization or e-commerce or commerce businesses for SMEs.
Okay. Actually, you jumped to my next question for you. Which are the main key behaviors you can see, like with, in consumer is changing now? I mean, we're all consumers personally, right? And apart from it, you're all working with consumers like a market. So what kind of trends you can perceive now? What is happening? What is changing now?
I'll take that. I mean, I think as Gregory mentioned, I mean, it again depends on the market. There's an aging population in Japan which requires a different sort of an interface. But the larger demographic dividend, as we call it, leads to a millennial kind of a shopper who are essentially digital natives, and all their experiences are driven from that standpoint. So how do businesses adopt to that and have an online-ish sort of an experience in shop when people walk in, so that you don't lose the essence of having a retail brick and mortar store, but also to be able to connect with them in terms of the different channels that they are on, whether it be Instagram or which is the new way of social commerce for them. So a lot of it has to be adopted to be able to support the new buyers that are coming into the ecosystem.
But Gregory, what about Japan? Because Japan is like, it's a very interesting country, right? And it's very different from the rest of the world. Can you give us some insight what's happening now in Japan?
So, you know, probably, you know, putting these, you know, elderly aside, you know, talking about the populations, and so anything that save time, you know, for the, you know, people. Now Japan's unemployment rate is, you know, less than 3%, like 2.6%. So every single one is busy, you know, doing something. So, you know, e-commerce is, you know, one way of saving your time in a good, in a big manner. But also the, you know, in the business field that I see, like SaaS service providers, saving a lot of the time of the, you know, people And coming back to the consumer activities, probably we support several companies in called web media areas, and we see interesting transformation still from the analog to digital. But also the web content managers there, they provide a solution as part of the advertisement. Therefore, will be a lot of the time savers, for the readers. And millennials is not necessary to listen to the sort of traditional with proven source of the informations. They sometimes rely on the people's comment on the website. Therefore there's a lot of room for the small players to capture the decent share in that space. Therefore I'm pretty excited to see these small web media players to get some power in the investment field in Japan.
Thank you so much. Henrik, can you give us some insight? Because I mean, you're overseeing all the Southeast Asian market, right? So is it very different from Japan, or it's going along?
I'm not familiar with Japan, so I can't comment on that. But I would say that two things have changed a lot in the last 5 years, and will continue to change. Expectations are a lot higher. Also, I'll give an example. I actually started with Zalora about 8 years ago. It's my first job when I came back from the States. And I still remember then that when they first launched, if you receive a parcel when you shop online, within a week, you're happy as a customer. Expectations were very, very low. Today, if you go to Taiwan, people expect the items to be delivered in 2 hours. Right? So the span of expectation growth is rapidly going to transcend across all industries. So Amazon Prime in Singapore does the same thing, 2-hour deliveries. Right now, this is the new standard. So more speed, saving more time, I think that's one point. The other point also is increased range. So e-commerce gives a lot of range. And no longer is shopping limited to local. International shopping is also going to be a lot more relevant. We saw this thing very relevant to us and very interesting. Fashion used to be very localized. But recently we saw a lot of global brand names from US actually achieving sizable sales in this part of the world. So it's cross-border, right? People want a certain item, a pair of Adidas shoes or Nike shoes. It's not available locally, they shop globally and it ships to their doorstep. So cross-border will also be a very sizable part of I think, the next stage of growth in terms of consumer expectations as well.
Thank you. Deepak, I'm really curious because I mean, you've mentioned that you have very deep expertise in India. Is India going along or it's different from Southeast Asia? How is it? What's the trend there?
India is a very, very large market. It's 1 billion people, thousands of cities, rural, urban, and the opportunity to build brands is immense. So what we've seen is a lot of mega trends, often conflicting trends depending on your socioeconomic group, where you went to school, what your aspirations are. And the underlying thread amongst all of them is personalization. Because of the digital era, whether you're living in a village or a city or whatever income you make, you have a smartphone, you get access to a lot of content and data, and that's driving a lot of your thinking. So, we as investors try and look for trends which we feel will last 10, 15, 20, 25 years and avoid what could be short-term sort of euphoria in a particular trend, and try and back those trends by backing entrepreneurs looking for those trends. I'll give you 2 examples. India is a big country, amongst the lowest populations in the world in terms of age, big young population. There isn't even one Indian baby food brand. So I'm leaving aside baby formula, but ready to eat baby in pouches or in jars, everything is imported or they make it at home. There's a clear trend towards convenience, ready to eat on the go. There's no reason why a country like India does not have what is equivalent of a Heinz or a Gerber or a Piccolo or a Plum in India. Same thing for baby personal care. So you go to a supermarket in Singapore, there'll be 3 aisles of baby stuff. You go to a bigger supermarket in Bombay, there'll be 1.5 shelves. Not like we don't have babies. It's just that consumers have behaved differently. That's changing. The incumbent brands haven't taken advantage of that trend. And there are thankfully a lot of entrepreneurs today who come back from the US or go to IIT and IIM. And I'm not saying I got to start e-commerce or I have to start a SaaS business. They're very happy to start a branded consumer business making whatever they want to make. So that's the big change. And those are the brands that and entrepreneurs we are looking to back. And there are lots of them.
Thank you so much. Michael, I know you have a lot of personal experience, right, in e-commerce. What's your opinion?
So I think the consumer behaviour is always something you need to watch, and it occurs to me now that there are two very distinct modes of consumer behaviour when it comes to shopping. Excuse me. One is what you might call the experiential shopping experience. They perhaps haven't made a brand selection or they want to have a good experience. You see the traditional retail sector reinventing itself with better and nicer stores. You see extravaganzas like Jewel here in Singapore at Changi Airport, which is a fantastic experience. And in the online world, that same thing exists with friends looking at stuff on Instagram and saying, should I buy this one? Do you like that colour? So there's this clear mode where people still want to be delighted and entertained. There's a place in the online world, there's a place in the offline world. But then you clearly see consumers then moving into kind of more of a functional shopping mode. And this, as an example, I see Amazon Prime here in Singapore. That's now become the behaviour in my household. We order from Amazon Prime 2 to 3 times a week. Spend $40, get free delivery, gets delivered in 2 hours. I don't have to think about it. I just know what I want to buy, I want to get it delivered. So I think businesses that are able to see those two trends or those two types of consumer behaviour, blend them together so they can both delight customers and also make it very easy to buy. They're the types of businesses that we certainly look for in terms of those more likely to see succeed in the future.
Thank you so much. Adi, I especially loved you like a desert for the last, right? Because I'm you're Chief Executive Officer of Zelinga, and I'm sure you're the one who has, you on the field. You know particularly what are the trends now for consumer behavior, what exactly changing. So can you give us insight, please? Because I think it's the most realistic and very valuable for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, definitely. All the things that the gentleman here said definitely are sort of the things that we are seeing as well. Two things that I would like to specifically point out that we as a fashion lifestyle e-commerce player see happening and changing on the consumer side of things. One is that people no longer want themselves to be badgered with products. You can't have a fashion lifestyle portal or a website or an app which is just badgering them with products, buy this, buy this, buy this. So a key change or a key trend that we are seeing, which is also influencing Zelingo's own product, is that you would have a lot more content on the website. People want to come to your portal not just for the purpose of shopping, but they want to come there to get entertained, to read about something, to consume some content, and then shopping is sort of like something that flows from there. You can't just directly be shoving it on their face that, hey, no, you need to buy this, buy this, buy this. So that is one key change that we are seeing, and then you have the advent of whether it is blogs coming up on fashion portals or live streaming happening through influencers on fashion portals. All those things are coming into the picture with consumers' behavior changing. The second thing that is happening and that we are seeing very sort of it's becoming more of a commonplace is that individualism is becoming more and more important. It's something that we've been seeing in the Western markets, in the US, etc. for a longish period of time. It is sort of moving to the Asian markets as well now. Zelingo, for example, built a private label for an Instagram celebrity in Indonesia, and that did better than a lot of other brick and mortar brands that were listed on the website. No longer brick and mortar, but the brands which were listed on the website. So the reason is there is a lot more cult following. People really want to find their own individuality, their own style, and that is the sort of products they're chasing. So fashion is getting democratized, and these smaller brands are popping up, which are doing amazing sales.
It sounds very good. It gives a lot of hope for small and medium businesses as well. Thank you very much. Guys, I want to know your opinion, right? Which sectors or which industries, what do you think will grow the most in the next, in the e-commerce? Which industries or which sectors will be booming in the next 10, 20 years? Any volunteers?
Uh, I think, let me take this, right? So I think from one of the earlier questions where Deepak was talking about access to financial services, I think fintech is something that we, at least as a company, are seeing something booming and will keep booming in the years to come. Again, fintech is a very broad term, so let's focus on the merchant side finance of things here, because especially in countries like Asia where it's very hard to get access to capital, what has started happening is that with portals like not just the Lingo but with the likes of Tokopedia, Lazada, etc., there is a lot more availability of alternate data, right? And that data has enabled not just financial institutions but also fintech companies and at times e-commerce companies to also assess their merchants and their sellers in a way better than someone else or better than a conventional organization. And financial, of course, is a great example of this, where they consumed a lot of transactional data and then fed that into the financial services arm of Alibaba, which led to the advent of Ant Financial. So financial services being powered through non-conventional data is going to create something, I feel, which is going to be disruptive and beautiful in sort of the next few years to come.
So your opinion, fintech?
I won't
To
say so.
summarize?
Yeah, fintech. Yeah.
Okay. Any other ideas?
I'm going to have a very biased opinion. I guess given that I only back consumer brands, I think it's a huge opportunity which has been gathering momentum for the last 10 or 15 years. But in packaged food and beverages, I think the dominance of the large CPG companies is coming to an end. I think the disruption you will see in the coming 10 or 15 years of how P&G, Unilever, Nestle will be taken down brand by brand, given their inability to move quickly, to respond to new trends, to answer the personalized calls of the millennial consumer. When I started doing consumer brands 20 years ago, I spent too much time trying to understand why consumers were behaving that way. 15 years ago, I gave up. I've got 3 kids, and my kids come home. My middle daughter's 10 years old. She goes to school, she comes back, she says, I'm becoming vegetarian, and I'm not going to drink milk, I'm not going to eat beef. I'm like, why? Is this a religious thing? She said, no, we've been told in school that cows are bad for the environment. It's not about loving animals. Greenhouse gases are bad. Cow milk cows have milk for cows, not for humans. And I'm going to drink oat milk or almond milk, and I'm not going to eat any meat. And it's not only her, it's the whole of grade 4. Okay, I've stopped asking what's happening. I look at the trend. I go to the canteen, they have oat milk, almond milk, and soya milk at school. Okay? This is a big trend. So what do? I look for brands or entrepreneurs looking to build alternative protein businesses. If my kids, who are only 10, are not having dairy, it's a long-term trend. They don't want dairy in the ice cream. They don't want dairy in the milkshake. It's a big issue. So I look at trends like that. So my view is the food industry will see significant disruption, not in categories per se, but how the product ingredients will change, giving an opportunity for new brands to be created to answer the demand from the new consumers.
Thank you. Michael, I see you very much agree, right?
Yeah, no, I'm really on board with that. Yeah, I completely agree.
About avoiding of milk or what?
The world that we live in today is one where the millennial consumer that we sometimes speak of in a disparaging way, it's the Instagram generation. Reality is that is now the largest segment of consumers globally, and market by market, with particularly markets such as Asia where you've got a very young population, the millennial consumer is your market. So that's a reality, and they have a different set of wants, desires, values, behaviours to previous generations. So that is a reality companies need to adapt to, so I very much agree with that. In terms of sectors, so I would go a little further than the consumer sector. I think there are a whole range of B2B sectors that notionally are retail. Things as simple as, but very large as, construction, building materials, hardware, trades and supplies. There's a whole range of sectors where the internet disruption and creating marketplaces, that's still in its relatively very early stage. I think there are going to be some big businesses emerge that really capture a lot of that, similar to what we have seen in China over the last 10 or 15 years.
I'm going to be a bit more focused on e-commerce. I actually think that a lot, the next 5-10 years, a big break will be brands going direct. Right, so I think they are crafting out more unique experiences that general providers cannot provide to the end user successfully. And in order to carve out maybe to millennials, I'm a millennial, then you might need a more unique experience to cater to the market. Yeah, so I think brands going direct would be a big one.
Thank you. Is it something different for Japan or it's similar?
Yeah, but I mean, this conference is something to do with the investment. So not only the technology going forward, I want to mention about investment opportunity as a consumer segment. Although Japan is, known as very low growth, macro issues, but one thing I want the people to aware, in this room that 60% of the Japan GDP is linked with consumer activities. $14 trillion of the cash are the held of the individuals. And so, only the way to unlock, getting some intention, from the consumers, how to spend the money. So, what comes in is that now because of the supply chain that every, panel members talked about, therefore cost is decreasing, and while that in these Instagrams in media, so everybody's looking for something new and something special to an individual person. I don't know, maybe still big in Asian countries that, people are following, I don't know, Louis Vuittons and Gucci, but in Tokyo that younger people are, try to find their specific small brand, niche brand. Therefore, as an investment thesis that I've been focusing on any of the, small, medium-sized, players in the area, not necessarily have a gigantic success, but can get the some small success, creating their own market. And talking about investment, that large players, the corporations have $2.6 trillion cash on their balance sheet, and having difficulty attracting these diverse young people. Therefore we can easily find an exit for these supporting these SMEs to sell these business to the large existing the business corporations to create a win-win situation as an investor, and also they can have now a new solution to approach to the younger people. So.
And Rag?
Yes, I mean, I think sort of all of this, the comments here sort of manifest itself into what we see in reality. Since we enable online commerce for businesses or entrepreneurs, we actually see close to about 80 to 85% of our customers coming from the individual entrepreneurs or the maker space. That is, they're creating their own brand or their own design, largely from the fashion area, but typically also in decor and artifacts and things like that. So we do see a lot of that coming through. And then if you couple that with the fact that in the emerging markets, your online retail to total retail is a single-digit number. It's nowhere even close to where the more developed markets in e-commerce are. You do see that e-commerce becoming the trend for them to adopt and then get into the marketplace to be able to sell their products and brands. So we see a lot of that actually happening, as both Henry and Deepak were saying, that the individual brands are the some that you will start to see coming out more into the open. They want to try, they have an idea, they want to build it out further.
Thank you. Gregory, before he already jumped to my next question. I mean, it's an Asian investment conference, right? So we have a lot of investment funds, we have a lot of investors and family office in this room. And I think all of them hearing us and thinking, what is there for me, right? So can you give some insight or maybe some kind of recommendations for investors? Where to look for? What kind of industries? What kind of projects? What is your recommendations for them? I think it will be one of the most worthwhile. Who want to start? Gregory?
I partially, answered the question, but
Yeah, I know.
Anything small, but unique, and there are someone that creating their, own niche, market in the players, and you can easily, probably find to go to the some, Comic-Cons these areas. From a traditional businessman standpoint, these people are sort of, probably seen as, non-traditional outsiders. But I think definitely, watching TikTok, these young, crazy people, would have, decent power to attract the, new consumers. So, and the smaller is the better from an investment standpoint. So it's easy to find the, exit route. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll answer next because I have to leave to catch a flight. I actually think that too easy, at least for us. We look at, so we are in Southeast Asia, Taiwan and Australia. So for developed markets, we actually look a lot into US because the market trends are very, very similar. So that will be Singapore, Australia, Taiwan, Malaysia. Developing markets, we look a lot into China. So we look at existing business models and companies and see what has worked there and what has yet to have started in our part of the world. And those are the areas that we enter. And I guess for investors, that's where you should be looking to invest.
Any particular advice?
So from an investment perspective, I would simply, I guess, make the observation that the promise of the e-commerce world and this new retail model is more profitable, better businesses. And I think when you compare the benchmarks of kind of old retail with new retail, what you start to see very clearly is two groups of metrics. And we certainly look in terms of investment thesis for companies that have fundamentally, better working capital cycles because they're turning inventory much faster, or they're not holding nearly as much inventory. So they're much more asset light, their working capital is so much better, their operating margins, particularly the businesses that are now vertically integrated, where they may be, a manufacturer, designer, retailer, right through the whole value chain. All of those things ultimately should be generating significantly better operating margins. So from an investment perspective, we now see some pretty clear demarcation between old models and new models, and new models generally develop much better return on asset numbers, return on invested capital. So from an investment perspective, I think the traditional metrics look much better in the best of the new businesses.
Deepak, I think you want to add something.
No, again, my lens is very myopic. I only look at consumer brands, and I think the opportunity there is very, very large. I think every industry goes through periods of boom and periods where there's a day of reckoning when the dynamics of the demand, the supply, the environment changes. Think of fossil fuel, think of oil, where for various reasons demand gets reduced, technology has evolved. That's happening in the CPG space. It's one of the few industries where there's been very little innovation in terms of new personalized offerings, because in the old days distribution, even today, distribution is still key. You can create a great brand and a great product, but getting that package to a village or a town is not easy. In the old days, to build a brand, you needed big budgets of above the line, TV, media, print. You do not need that anymore. I've launched brands in India that have become market leaders with marketing budgets for the whole year of sub $500,000. It's amazing how efficient digital media is today, and that's what's changing. So look at segments within consumer brands that are being tossed on their head because of how consumers are behaving. Ask yourself if the incumbents are evolving fast enough. The answer usually is going to be no, because it takes a very long time for a big CPG company to get local, regional, global approval to launch a new variant. And then find an entrepreneur who's out there answering a particular need in a particular way.
Thank you. Adil?
So I would probably take it a bit further from what Henry said, right? So even
I think your advice will be invest in Zirinka.
I would say similar sort of guidance, right? You look at the US, for example, for inspiration, or you look at China for inspiration, and similar stuff sort of comes into our part of the world as well. From the US, if you were to look, or if you were to take that lens, I'm trying to keep it a bit short. So you have all these individual brands that have come up there, these influencer-led brands, or these, I think echoes with whatever everyone said, Gregory said, the smaller brands which are trying to create a niche for themselves and creating a cult following, etc. There are multiple of these Instagram brands who have come into picture in the Western world and slowly now popping up in Asia as well, which are doing phenomenally well, and they have created a cult following for themselves. And are doing really, really good. So I think these individual small brands which can create a niche for themselves and hopefully not be small in the near future are one of those spaces that are very, very interesting to look into. And the second space would definitely be on the B2B side of things. Now, B2B is huge, it's diverse. There can definitely be logistics optimization companies, there can be payment integration companies, but specifically the B2B SaaS space, and I'm sure Anurag would agree, the B2B SaaS space is really interesting. B2C is glamorous. B2B is where you really need to get your hands dirty, but once you do it, the output per unit effort is a lot higher.
Thank you very much. Anurag, do you want to add something?
I'm probably going to be biased and say invest in omni-channel enabling entities, but then, I think the gentleman saying is absolutely right. There's many areas that can come through, and I think we look at it from a lens of saying where is the emerging trends coming through, even if we sort of established in some of the developed markets. So again, I go back to the point that online retail is a very small portion of overall retail in the emerging market space. And if companies that can enable that entire process to happen digitally and be able to access more customers, picking up from where Deepak said, you could actually have a viable business for a brand without having to spend the big bucks by using the digital medium to go out and build your consumer base as well. So, and that typically happens through e-commerce and stuff which sort of bridges the divide and makes it faster for a company to get to profitability. So again, going back, companies which are in that ecosystem, fintech being one, logistics being the other, I mean, payment aggregators, all of those elements sort of become the future, at least in the emerging market space where we've seen that.
Thank you so much. As you know, I have a huge amount of questions to each of you, right? But I see the time, we don't have time. Do anyone want to address any questions to our panelists? Any questions? Well, so quiet. So it seems we don't have any more questions, right? I would like to say a huge thank you to each of you who came, who share your valuable opinion about, e-commerce is huge. It's really, really huge. And it's going to be population of the world is growing and it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to be bigger and bigger. So let's see, probably we're going to meet again next year and see if we share again what has happened to this year. Thank you again and see you later for drinks.